Hello, everybody. Hello, good morning. Thank you for coming nice and bright and early to our panel called Crowdfunding: A New Dawn. I'm Lizzie, I'm a film producer. This is Franny Armstrong, who directed Age of Stupid, McLibel and Drowned Out, and we work together. And this is Phil, who's an amazing explorer, adventurer, filmmaker, and he has also raised finance in a really interesting way. And so today we're going to talk through Age of Stupid, which we crowdfunded starting in 2004, our new project Undercovers, which we're raising £4 million for through a kind of evolved crowdfunding model. And then Phil's going to talk about how he kept the rights to a film and raised over £1 million. So, Franny.
Over to me?
Yes.
Hello, everybody. So I'm going to start at the beginning, if that's all right, which is I became a filmmaker totally by accident. I was actually a drummer in a pop group. But I heard about a trial starting up, the McDonald's libel trial. This is in '94, where basically two people had been sued by McDonald's, and these two people decided to stand up and fight McDonald's in court. And I just thought it was the most cool thing I'd ever heard. And my dad was a filmmaker, so I happened to have access to filmmaking equipment. I didn't have dreams of being a filmmaker. I just thought, I'm going to help these two people who are fighting McDonald's by making a film. Naively, I thought that. And then tried to get a commission in the normal way. Went to BBC and Channel 4 and ITV and Channel 5 and everybody. And the thing was that at that time, McDonald's were busy suing everybody or starting legal cases in order to control the criticism against them and silence their critics. And so all the big corporations, the big newspapers, Morrissey as well, the Sunday Times, Channel 4, The Guardian, everybody had had legal troubles with McDonald's. So when we came along naively going, oh, we want to make a film about this trial, it's so brilliant, they all went, no way. And it wasn't just us naive beginning filmmakers, there was also lots of big name people, because it was a big story, also wanted to make it. Nobody could get a commission. So then it came down to me, and the guy who's in the story, the guy fighting McDonald's, said to me something which changed my life, which was, why does having no money mean you can't make the film? And I was like, well, that is true. Because this was back in the day when, to get the film equipment, it was like tens of thousands of pounds. It wasn't like we've all got HD cameras on our phones, and YouTube wasn't invented and all that. The only way people made documentaries then was commissions. Anyway, so I thought, well, I have got the film, I have got the access to the equipment, I'm going to make it anyway. Borrowed £1,000 from a family friend and just gave up my job and set off to make it. Two people in the trial told me there was about 6 months of the trial still to go. In actual fact, it ended up being the longest trial in English history, and I spent 10 years on it. But at the end of making the film, well, it was 3 years, the first version of the film. At the end of the first 3 years, I'd finished the film. It was a massive international news story, and I owned the rights. This is the key thing, because I'd funded it myself. I hadn't got a commission. And so I did it that way by default, but then I came to realize that this is the absolute right way to do it, because if you own the rights, then you control the distribution. And if there are profits to be made, then you get the profits. So just give you one example. Say, for example, the BBC had commissioned the film at the beginning. They would have shown it once or twice, got maybe 2 million viewers, and then that would have been it. But because I owned the rights, I was getting all these offers from all around the world. For example, this cable channel in America called WorldLink TV, they offered me $500 to broadcast my hour-long film. That is nothing, $500, and they did it. And I said, yeah, okay. But they got 3 million viewers, which is as much as a BBC broadcast. So had it belonged to the BBC, there's no way they would have sold it for $500. But because I was controlling it, and my aim was to get the number of viewers. And anyway, so then it went to film festivals, cinema release, DVD downloads. I'm still going on about it now, as you can see. And you
can actually buy it.
You can buy it
later on if you would like.
And ended up getting 26 million viewers. So that's when I started working with Lizzie, and then we wanted to make our new film, which became The Age of Stupid, about climate change. The first thing was we have to own the rights. There's no way we're getting a commission. At this stage, we could have got a commission, but we didn't want one. So it's like, okay, but we're going to need a lot more money than McLibel, which was pretty much done on the £1,000 and selling the footage as we went along as it became a big news story. So then it's like, okay, we want to make this documentary. It's going to be in 5 continents. It's going to have animation. It's going to have an orchestral score. We're going to need about £500,000, but we don't want a commission. What are we going to do? So Lizzie, myself, and my dad, good old dad, came around our flat, and we invented crowdfunding there and then. Other people argue that they invented crowdfunding, but in our version, we invented it there and then. We'd never heard of it before. We just sat down and thought, how are we going to get the money? And we thought, we'll get lots of people to give us a little bit of money. It wasn't that a big invention. And then, are you going to talk about the details of how we
Yes.
did the first crowdfunding.
I'm just also going to pass around my book, and what we want you to do is write your email in it, and we will add you to our email list, and this will become clear how important we think the email list is. So I'm going to pass that around.
I'll do that one.
Okay. So just to reiterate a little bit, why we crowdfunded Age of Stupid, really it was for editorial control, so we could make the film that we wanted to make, control of the distribution, so that we could give it away if we wanted, so it would reach the most people, control of the finances, so that if it was a big hit, we and the crew and the people in it would make money. And yes, we know we are total control freaks. And how we did it is it's not donations like Kickstarter, it was always investments. So people put in, the first people, we got 100 people to put in £500 each. And they each own a share of the profits from the film. They weren't actually shares, they were called limited recourse debenture loans, basically unsecured loans that are only repaid in the event of a profit. And so now we report back to our funders. The deal was that we would pay them back for 10 years.
So when we first approached a lawyer, when we had our idea and we kind of jotted it down, and we went to a film financing lawyer, he said, "This is the most original film financing scheme I've seen in 25 years in the business, but it's illegal."
Because we tried to call them shares, which they're not actually shares. So
and that's why it ended up being called that long-winded thing that Lizzie said, at which point it became... And also we had to get a stamp of approval from the Financial Services Authority and jump through lots of hoops, basically.
Yeah.
But it wasn't impossible.
And the pitch was to investors at the beginning, if you put in £500 and we make the same amount of money as we did as Franny's last film, you'll get 50 back. But if we make the same as Michael Moore's Fahrenheit 9/11, you'll get £64,000, and kind of emphasise that. But, you know, we were always very clear with people it was a high-risk investment. The crew also worked at 1/3 wages, and we kept 40% of the profits to repay the crew. So whenever we make our annual payments, we always do it kind of Christmas Eve, we pay all of our funders and our crew at the same time. We've got funders from all over the world, mostly from the UK, also from New Zealand, because I'm from New Zealand, from Europe, and from America.
One of the big advantages of doing it like that is that if you take finance not from a third party, they often want to recoup first, and they insist on. So say your film makes £500,000, which would be fantastic if it did, of a documentary, then guess what? Who takes the first £450,000, and which means you've got £50,000 to share out amongst everybody else. Whereas the way we set ours up was that everybody starts getting paid at the beginning. So even if there's only £100 to share, everybody gets something straight away. And we paid everybody, as Lizzie said, once a year for 10 years. And how many years in are we?
We've done 5. So we've got 5 more years to go. So as you can see from the slide, you know, we started with a small event. We just put it out on our email list, and I think about 20 people came. We kind of tried to pack the screening room with about 10 to 15 friends. And we just tried to sell our first shares, and it was bloody scary because we didn't really have anything. We just had an idea for a film. But on that very night, we raised £17,000, and that for us was a lot. And so we saw that this could be successful, and we went on to do larger amounts. And as we went on, people got a lower percentage of the shares for their money. So, for example, the final stage, for £10,000, people only got the same percentage as the people who put in £500 at the beginning, because obviously the risk was much lower. By the time we'd actually finished the film, people could see it and they could, you know, decide for themselves whether they thought it would be successful or not.
Cue the trailer?
Oh yeah, good idea. You guys want to see a trailer?
We'll show you a bit of the film we made.
Here we go.
So as soon as the whole crowdfunding idea started becoming known, we got tons of press about it all around the world, which was a brilliant thing, actually, but we hadn't anticipated that the way we were making the film was actually going to generate tons of press to market the film. Including the front page of the New York Times and a big article in Time magazine and all sorts of big stuff, a Vogue feature.
So ridiculous.
But they all said the same thing, which was like, this is the internet, you know, they're funding through the internet and all that, and that was not true at all, because actually at the beginning it was very much one-on-one, people we knew and people they knew that passing the word on, because we wanted to make the film partly with the oil industry, so we didn't want to put it on the internet, we didn't want to say what we were doing. And this actually turned out to have advantages. Like Lizzie was saying, the first event we held was just about 30 people that we knew, really friends and family, and we said it's secret, you've got to keep it secret, you know, we mustn't let the word out kind of thing, and everybody loved that. They felt like they were in on the inside, and then they told their friends and they told their friends. And as Lizzie said, the first night we got 17,000 quid. And the next day, we bought the camera that we shot the whole film on, and the day after that, we went to Paris to try and find one of the people we wanted to be in the film, and we found him, and then he became in the film. And this, straight away, we realized a huge advantage of doing it this way, which was you are not waiting for an answer from the commissioners about whether or not you can make your film. You just get out there, you get the first bit of money, and off you go, you start the next day. You're not waiting 6 months for a reply, and they've got to think about their slot, and somebody's left somewhere, and blah, blah, all that.
And
really.
it's, you're always raising money, so for about, well, actually we're doing it the whole time, but especially in the first year, I was always like going down to someone's house or office somewhere in London, and like I'd take, trailer and chat to them, and then if that person put in £5,000, you're like going back to the office knowing, oh my God, that's really significant for us, and that's going to keep us going. And we never were just funding and then shooting. We were always funding.
We basically always had naught in the bank account because we'd always just be like, oh God, and then another funder would come along at that moment, which was actually brilliant because it kept the production very, very lean. If we'd had 450 grand in the bank account at the beginning, we wouldn't have done it in the same way as just always having naught.
So one thing I think that was crucial to our success with Age of Stupid, which we started in 2004, so it's a long time ago now, is we wrote a really comprehensive funding plan, which is on our website. You can take a look. And we were honest. Like, this is one of the points we had on it. Wouldn't I make more cash investing in oil? Yes. If it's money you're after, don't invest in us. And I think that honesty, but also with the vision that we always had for the film, kind of reassured people that we weren't taking it lightly. Some of the advantages of crowdfunding, obviously there were the advantages we've outlined, the editorial control, the speed of getting the money, not waiting around for a commission, but there were really significant advantages that we hadn't anticipated. Like, we had an army of PR agents. When the film came out, we had 228 crowdfunders and 100 crew, all of whom felt like the film was their baby, and they went nuts. They'd put posters up, they emailed all their lists. One of them booked out an entire cinema, paid for every ticket, and gave them away. And for our UK premiere, because we did 62 cinemas simultaneously, we needed a lot of PR, and we didn't have any advertising money, so we never could have done it without our investors.
In fact, the UK Film Council did a survey coming out of the people, we didn't even know they were doing it, but of people coming out of the cinemas having seen our film, and I can't remember the exact numbers, but we had something like 85% of people had come on word of mouth, and the Film Council told us it was, sorry, I don't know the exact number, but something like normally 5%. And that's why they rang us up and said, what the hell have you done with your film? Because we've never seen a film with 85% word of mouth. And that was all because of our crowdfunding.
Our crowdfunders, yeah. So we're just going to show a quick clip of our UK premiere, which we would not have been able to pull off if we didn't crowdfund the film, but we never anticipated that as a benefit.
So I'm just going to throw in a couple of other advantages to doing it this way before we get into the disadvantages. And one of them is, I found with my other films that it can be a bit of a lonely business. Because after about the first year, all your friends and family get bored of asking, oh, how's that film going? And basically everybody loses interest and you're just kind of plodding on your own. And it's hard to keep your morale going and your momentum going. But with this, we had this fantastic mailing list.
Which you're all going to be on.
So, whenever Lizzie and I were stuck in Nigeria or something, or, something had gone wrong or whatever, we'd send a message out, and then loads of people would send us support, and we just felt that we had this huge team backing us, which was really, really significant.
It's like a big family, really.
It really was, or big team. And also because, we ended up with over 200 crowdfunders, and they all were invested in the film, literally, but also metaphorically. And these are people, kind of on-it people, the kind of people who are networked and what have you. So whenever we needed anything, we would just write to our list and go, I don't suppose, well, for example, one example was, we wanted to record the orchestra for our orchestral score, and we couldn't afford to hire a big studio, obviously. So we wrote to them saying, has anybody got a big space in London that's quiet so we can record our orchestra? And somebody wrote back going, I've got a recording studio, and you can have it for free. And then when we decided to add the drama element, we need a drama screenwriter, and it's like, how on earth are we going to get one of them? And again, we wrote to our list, don't suppose anybody's got connections, and somebody wrote back going, I am the art dealer of Alex Garland, who wrote The Beach, 28 Days Later, blah, 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 and I happen to know he's really into crowdfunding, he's really into climate change, because he's got solar panels on his roof, and he lives around the corner from you. And a week later, Alex was helping us write our script. So anything we ever needed.
The advantage here was we didn't really have any normal business clothes, and we had to go to interview the head of Shell America, and so we put it on the list, like, does anyone have any normal business clothes that we can borrow? Because look at us, this is
before and after.
Yeah, and so someone was like, come round, and she put us in all her lawyer's outfits, and obviously we look ridiculous in both of them.
Which do you think looks better, the norm before or after? And which is the better look?
Who put your hand up for before? Put your hand up for after. Okay, you guys are DocFest, though. You're not Shell America, but we passed for normal business people. And then, it was just Franny and I, at times, even though we had a big crew, if we didn't get up and do something each day, nothing would happen. There was no external deadline, which is great in terms of your creative process, and you can keep going until the film is how you want it. But it's quite scary when, it is just the two of you, and if we fell out or if something happened between us, nothing would happen on the film.
And we got all these people's money, which we felt a big responsibility for, of course. There was one point. We made a making-of film, by the way, which is the whole story, including the crowdfunding and everything, which is on YouTube if you want to watch it. It tells you everything and shows you a very bleak moment where we had a screening of what we thought was the nearly finished film.
We were totally deluded.
At the Curzon Soho, who gave us the screen for free, which was lovely of them. And we invited all our funders, like, it's nearly finished, it's complete flop. And they were all desperately disappointed and thought that we felt really bad that we'd thrown away the money. And that's when we had to invent the drama element of it, but anyway.
And so on to the disadvantages of crowdfunding. You're doing it on your own. There's a huge amount of admin, which we still do because we don't have any staff. There's just the two of us. So when it comes to the end of the year, that's us looking at, what sales have we made? How many DVDs have we sold? Adding it all up and then dividing it by the 350 people, making the bank transfers, which is that's a lot of people, and they
updating people's bank accounts because so-and-so's moved, somebody's split up with their husband, and now they want the amounts to go to two different blah, blah, blah.
Exactly. So there's a lot of admin, but that's even now. But during the process of making the film, that was a lot of admin to get 228 people to sign the agreements. Then we noticed that there was a mistake. We could get them to re-sign the fixed agreement, and that was kind of endless.
And you had to pretty much talk to each one face-to-face. Not face-to-face, but to speak to them.
Yeah.
There wasn't many people just reading it, were they, and giving the money?
Most people wanted to meet us. We did get one cheque once out of the blue for £35,000. But now we know her really well, and she wanted to give one share of £5,000 to each godchild, and that was her gift to them.
Another really big disadvantage is if you're not going down the commission route, is you haven't got all the backup that you get with the commission, i.e. the commissioners and the exec producers and the legal team and all that. So you need to build that into your structure of your team somehow, because obviously when you're making a commission film, all the screenings that you have with the execs are really helpful, and they've got loads of great ideas, and they're all really experienced. And so what we do is we kind of have a group of
like a brains trust.
Who we show the film to, who kind of act as our exec producers, so we don't miss out on that. And of course we have lawyers. Weinmans, they're brilliant if anybody needs one.
So those are kind of the disadvantages.
Yep.
Did they get their cash back? Well, the people who put in £500 at the beginning...
No is the short answer.
No is the short answer. They have had £390 so far. That's after 5 years. And so we anticipate they will get their £500 back by the 10 years. But obviously with inflation and interest, they have lost money overall. But the people who put in £10,000 in the final stage, they've only had that same £390 back. So they really haven't made their money back at all. But because we were honest from the start, people are so happy with the way they got involved and the way that the film's gone, that no one's kind of been angry about it.
Well, more than that, people are saying that one guy said to us that when he's on his deathbed, he's going to think that the best things he ever did with his life are have his 2 children and invest in The Age of Stupid.
He said making. I said making The Age of Stupid. And I was like, making it? Ooh. Okay, £5,000 making it. That's cool.
Yeah. But that's how invested these people are in it, feeling that they really... And they did, we all made it together. We probably did a bit more than they did.
So, on to our new project that we're working on now. It's called Undercovers. It's a long-running drama series. We're aiming for Borgen, kind of The Wire, Breaking Bad, just putting it out there. I know it's ridiculous, but we aim high. Everything in it is true, but it is a drama, and it's a long-running series. We're planning 5 seasons, but we're just working on season 1 now, and if that is successful, then we will go on to do the others. Season 1 is 4 times 60 minutes. And the story is about, you've probably seen it, it's been big news in this country, undercover police officers for the last 50 years have been spying on activists and having long-term relationships with some of them, and in some instances even sleeping with the women and having children with them. This is one of the undercover officers at the birth of his son, but the girlfriend thought he was a fellow activist and didn't know he was an undercover officer, and only found out after 25 years of bringing up the son on her own that she had had a child with an undercover officer. So why crowdfund it again? It's the same reasons as before. It's the editorial control, the control of the distribution, control of the finances, but with this one, it's kind of an added element that these women have trusted us, and in particular Franny, to tell their stories, and so...
They've already been totally betrayed by the state, by the police, by these particular officers who were their boyfriends. And so the idea that we would persuade these people to let us tell their story, and then we would go to a broadcaster, make it with the broadcaster, and then at the last minute, some high up in the broadcaster say, oh no, we're going to change that actually, and we're going to make the police do X, Y, Z or whatever. Then if that happened, it would be out of our control because we wouldn't have editorial control. And then we would feel so terrible that we'd then betrayed them again after everything they've been through. So, you know, we did think, is it the best route to go down for this drama, getting a commission and doing it the normal way? And then again, we were like, no, we're going to have to do it independently in order to keep the integrity of the story. And so the women trust us to tell their story properly. But then, you know, of course, the world's changed now. Everybody does crowdfunding now. The equipment's much cheaper. We could, you know, if it was a documentary, it'd be relatively straightforward. But guess what? We're doing a drama. You need £1 million an episode, which means we need 4 million quid, and that is a lot of money to crowdfund in the normal way. So we thought we're going to have to reinvent crowdfunding and think of a new way of doing it to raise 4 million.
Yeah, and this has actually been evolving while we've been here at DocFest a bit. But basically, we're going for 1.1 million per episode.
Because there's a tax credit at 1 million. So if you get to 1 million, then you're going to get 200 grand back from the government. So.
But that is the budget as well, I think we have to say.
It is the budget.
And so then there's 4 slots for each episode that we're selling shares. We've set up a new company called Undercovers TV Limited, and it's a special purpose vehicle for this project.
And this time it is shares.
They are actually shares, ordinary shares. And the company, we've qualified it for SEIS and EIS tax relief. So the first people to invest get 50% income tax relief. So the first guy, for example, put in £100,000. He gets 50 grand back immediately in his next tax return. And then he also owns the shares in our company, which will hopefully be profitable.
But interestingly, you can set up the company with voting shares and non-voting shares, which means we can still control everything. Because one of the reasons we didn't do shares originally with Age of Stupid is we didn't want to give control to the shareholders in terms of the shareholders can all decide, oh, we're going to throw Franny and Lizzie out and get somebody else to direct it. So we didn't want that. But this time when we were setting this up, to get around that problem, we did the voting shares and non-voting shares. So basically only Lizzie and I have voting shares.
There's 10 A shares, which are the voting ones, and there's 10,000 B shares. And you guys can all buy the 10,000 B shares if you're interested.
Which means you get the profit, but you don't have the control, which is fair enough.
And I think people who are investing in us, they understand that that's how we're doing it. It's pretty clear. So we raised the development budget, that was 150K, from 2 people, one of whom we already knew, and the second one, interestingly, came off our email list, which is partly why we think it's so important. We'd never met him before, never heard from him, and Franny wrote, it wasn't even an appeal for money, she just updated the list, we're doing this new project. He emailed in and said, you know, I'm not that rich, I'm not an activist, I totally abhor what the police have done, I would like to put a significant amount of money, i.e. £20,000 in. And I was like, oh my God, brilliant. And I said it to Franny, and she was like, yeah, but we really need 50. I was like, she was like, why don't you call him and say, you know, there's just one slot, 50, or not, you know, if he would like to do the 50, then we're done for development, and that would just be brilliant, and blah, blah. So that's what we did, and he did put in the 50. And he was
just somebody who'd seen McLibel 10 years before, wasn't he? Had signed up to our mailing list, had never said anything, you know, had just been reading our messages all the way through Age of Stupid.
And he was choosing between a pinball company and us, because he wanted to get the tax relief for other reasons, and he was about to put the money into the pinball company.
And his lawyer advised him to, didn't he?
His lawyer was like, don't invest in this film.
Don't do that film, no.
He forwarded me the email, and the lawyer was like, you have no control, like, they cannot give you any money, you are probably not going to get any money, like, these films are really high risk, and
do the pinball, that's what the lawyer says.
And he still did it.
Yeah.
So that was the small bit, the 150K development, and so now we're raising the production finance, and we have these, what we thought were 4 slots, really, for 600K per episode, and we were hoping that one person would do each of them, or possibly a syndicate of people might come together. But the first person we went to speak to said that really he would like to do all 4 of them if he is going to do it. So that is ideal for us. And then we're looking at making up the budget from maybe a UK, but maybe an international pre-sale, a significant one, and then the tax credit, as we said. So just a little bit of detail, but I thought it might be useful in terms of comparisons. So Age of Stupid, they were unsecured loans. Undercovers, they're actual proper shares. Age of Stupid, the minimum investment was £500. Undercovers, we don't know actually. We haven't agreed, but we're thinking £10,000.
It's interesting to think about how much you put the minimum, because you can put it £5 and lots of people can give you £5, or you can put it £500,000. And there are people who can give you £500,000. They're just different people. And it's just a matter of finding those people. And obviously, it's a hell of a lot more less admin if you can find one person to give you £500,000 than 100, whatever it is.
Yeah.
A hell of a lot of people, you can see I'm no good at admin or maths, to give you each of those £5, because each of those people you have to speak to, you have to email, you have to update their bank details, etc.
Weirdly, the less money people give you, the more work they are.
That's true.
I mean, it's proven to be true over the years. So both of them are investment. We've never, I mean, people can give us donations, and they did with Age of Stupid, but we've never kind of gone down that Kickstarter model, which is just donations, just give us money and we'll make something. There's no tax relief on the Age of Stupid investments, but for Undercovers, there's significant tax relief. For Age of Stupid, we've done 5 of the 10-year payouts. We have 5 to go, and then that's it, we're done. But for Undercovers, you know, they get dividends from, it's like a normal company. So if the company's successful, then we'll be paying them forever. If it's unsuccessful, the company will shut down and they won't get anything. And then the second last one, I don't know if you agree with me, Franny, but I was trying to assess like how much of the reason people gave was because of the social impact and how much was the kind of financial projections, the chance of getting money. And I thought with Age of Stupid it was probably 80-20, like 80% they were doing it for climate change for that reason, and 20% maybe they might get lots of money. With Undercovers, I think because we're asking for larger amounts and because it's a more commercial proposition,
and because they definitely get the tax relief assuming they qualify for it, but they'll know that before they give them money.
I think it's kind of 50-50, and with both, we never used a platform. I mean, Kickstarter wasn't invented when we started Age of Stupid, but I wouldn't put it on a platform at all. We kind of do it in our own way.
But you can do.
Yeah. What do they get? We talked about the tax relief. They also get shares in the company. They hopefully get lots of money further down the line. If we make as much as, this is ridiculous, but Simon Beaufoy is writing it for us, or writing it with us, and if we make as much as Hunger Games, which I realise is a ridiculous comparison, but he wrote it, they will, for their £600,000 that they're putting in, they'll get 35 million back. So there you go. The people who sponsor the episodes, the 600k investment, they will get like brought to you by, so naming rights, although if they want it, yeah. And you know, they'll get the knowledge that they've been a part of getting this really important story out into the mainstream press, and also hopefully revolutionising the way that TV shows are made. They'll also get tickets to premieres and all that stuff as well. And I think, like, I was thinking about the psychology of why people invested in Age of Stupid and why they're investing in Undercovers, and I think it's like you're doing the right thing, like rescuing a cat or kitten from a fire.
That looks to me like it's trying to strangle the kitten.
It's a fireman's glove.
It's mortal jeopardy there.
And, you know, that's the main reason, but there's the small chance that you might make a load of money, and I think it appealed to people on both those kind of angles.
I think Age of Stupid worked on that front because the team we had, that we presented with at the beginning, and in fact made the film, was myself, who'd made McLibel, so that was known as a, you know, successful campaigning, you know, film that I'd seen all the way through, so they knew I wasn't going to give up, all the rest of it. Then it was climate change, which was like, is the most important issue of our generation. But also we had John Batsek, indeed he's working on this as well, you know, the well-known doc producer who'd had smash hit documentaries. So you could see people thinking, climate change, yeah, I really believe that. Franny, yeah, I want to support her. Lizzie, yeah, they're great. Oh, but John Batsek could be a smash hit. I could get loads of cash. So it was like that little kind of lottery ticket feel that certainly nobody thought they were going to get lots of cash, definitely not. But it was like a punt on the lottery as well. It was a little extra angle. And I think if you're thinking of doing a crowdfunding campaign, it is good if you can get that element in somehow so people think it could be a smash hit.
Yeah.
Most of them are not going to be, let's face it.
And just an example to share with you guys, there's a beer company called Brewdog who've, in my opinion, been like the most successful equity crowdfunding. That's where you sell shares to lots of people in recent, like this year. They only gave up 4% of their company and they raised £4 million. Their shares were £100. And when I looked at their benefits, which is a bit small here, but they never once talk about getting any money back. It's really clever. It's like, oh, you're going to be supporting British beer, you know, you're going to come to a big party. And I think because people were putting only £100, you know, you can do that. I think with ours, we have to talk about the financial projections, but it's a really great example of the, you know, selling the benefits and not even including any information about things people aren't going to get.
How much did they raise?
4 million from 4%.
Nice.
Easily. They were oversubscribed.
And what percent are we, if we do our 2 million? I can't remember.
Yeah.
A lot more percent we're selling of our company.
Yeah, we're selling a significant portion of the company, yes. So, this is maybe a bit nerdy, but some of you might want to do it. SEIS and EIS are just tax relief. So they're trying to encourage investors to put money into high-risk startup companies. Just a couple of things, if you are thinking about doing it, that I found were important. The way the company is set up is really crucial. You can't just get an off-the-shelf company, and if you do that, you won't be eligible, probably. So you have to get a lawyer and just look at exactly how you want to set the company up.
You're welcome to email us, and we can help you with that, because now we know how it is. We can, you know... you know, we're not proprietorial about it. We're happy to pass on that information, and you don't have to pay all the money that we paid to the lawyer.
Yeah, because we learned a lot kind of going through it, and it was expensive. Yeah. There's a good platform, which is called Crowdcube, for equity crowdfunding, and they're raising a lot. It's huge. It's not for film. It's for any business. And they take 5%. The reason we didn't go with them is because we wanted to keep control of the actual company. We wanted a very bespoke company, and Crowdcube won't allow that because you have to do it all their way. That's why, you know, they're a platform.
But also with all these platforms, they take the admin away from you, but you've still got to find the people with the money to give you their money, and in a way you're giving away that 5% just for the admin, aren't you?
And we also thought 5%, like at the time we thought we were raising $1 million. We thought that's a significant amount, plus we'll learn about it, you know, we'll get to do it ourselves and all that stuff. The shares have to be absolutely fully paid when issued, so you can't give people shares and then get money later. They have to be paid for when they're issued. You cannot have any plans to wind up the company, so that's so you don't just do a company like for tax avoidance. The tax relief can be withdrawn down the line. So if your company stops being compliant at any time, that investor can get the tax relief withdrawn. So that's really important because that would be bad for them. There are new regulations coming in about this on October the 1st. So equity crowdfunding is going to be more strictly regulated. So either do it before then or get better legal advice. Lawyers' fees are significant in this area, and it is a bit scary. I always have to say, get your own independent financial and legal advice. Tiny bit more nerdy. SEIS is what you do at the beginning. It's called seed investment. EIS is like enterprise investment. SEIS is a small amount, 150K, and they get really good tax relief. EIS is much bigger. You can get $5 million a year for your company. Each person can put in $1 million if they want to. But really, they have the same rules. And once you qualify for SEIS, as long as you don't go non-compliant, you are qualified for EIS. Okay, so is it risky? Not as risky as what this guy's doing. But investing in film and in our TV show, of course it's risky and of course it's high risk. The second guy who came off the mailing list, he called me, like it was like a 6-month process of talking to him about it. And on the second last week or something, he said, so, is this the same as like a buy-to-let? Like, am I going to get 5% annual return on investment? And I was like, no. I don't know how he got that impression. I was like, no, like it's high risk, blah, blah, blah. Read what your lawyer said to you.
And that's why you're getting the tax break, because the government's trying to support high-risk startups. So
yeah, so it is risky, and I think it's important to get that across to people. Our top tips for crowdfunding, and this is our last slide. Your email list is your best funding mechanism. Like I talked about the guy who came off it. That's just one example. But just before Copenhagen Climate Summit, we had no money. We were actually in a lot of debt. And Franny wrote an amazing message.
Not before the Copenhagen Climate Summit. We were doing this massive global premiere, which was the Moby thing that was we were playing there in New York, going live to 63 countries with these huge companies with satellite trucks saying, we're not going to do the satellite link if you don't give us the money up front. We were like, serious trouble. We had to raise how much?
Well, yeah, so one of our investors gave us like a loan for that. That was great. But then, a couple of months later, we were like 150 grand down, I think. And we were just like, what are we going to do? And Franny wrote this message to the list that was amazing. She sold some of her own shares in the company. And in 48 hours, we raised over £150,000. And mostly from people who'd already invested. Yeah. It wasn't really new people. It was mostly people who'd been following us for all the time. So email list is important. keep the budget low. I mean, you only have to raise what you spend, right? The amount is really important. I did like some fundraising in America, and the biggest mistake people make fundraising is they don't ask for money. The second biggest mistake they make is they talk about everything else apart from the money. The second biggest mistake is that they ask for too little. And people are like thinking you're going to ask more. Always ask high, I would say. Events are really important, and so are relationships. They're investing in you as a person. You can't do it all online. It's about meeting people.
The guy who gave us 100 grand to start Undercovers, you were saying we should try it for 50 grand, and I was like, let's say we want 200. And we said to him 200, and he said, I'm thinking 100. We're like, great. Which was double what we wanted, so.
Yeah, you've got to start high.
Yeah, start high.
Get others to sing your praises and connect to their peers. So we often had like one of our funders speaking at our funding events and saying why they put money in and so on. And my final tip is that if you are spending more than 50% of your time raising money for your project, give up. Maybe something is not right about the project, or you are not communicating it right, or is not the right time for it, but I would just move on to something else.
I'm not sure I would. I think I would keep going with it.
Okay. So we're going to have more questions after Phil has done his presentation, and so then I think there's going to be time for questions at the end. Great.
Okay, cheers. If we can swap over, please, to the other presentation. So I'm going to be talking about a documentary I shot on the Catlin Arctic Survey. And this was a 3-year international scientific expedition across the Arctic Ocean. And it was originally set up by a guy called Penn Haddow, who's a polar explorer, and he set up Geomission. And Geomission's a kind of sponsor broker organization specializing in scientific expeditions. And I was commissioned to work with Geomission and the Catlin Arctic Survey to make a documentary about the expedition. Previously, they just had stills photography and little video clips just to communicate the message of the science. But they really wanted to do a step change. And we were just talking about this yesterday evening. I think it's a really kind of evolving and creative process, trying to find funding now for your projects. And so coming back to Geomission, they were actually brokering the deal, and it took, in the later stages, about 3 months just to finalise what Catlin were wanting. Catlin are an international insurance and reinsurance company, and they're interested in climate change and climate science because of the percentage of risk and the issues behind the changing climate and changing weather systems. To give you a little bit of background of myself, I used to work at BBC Science and Features. I worked at the BBC Natural History Unit. And over the last kind of 20-odd years, I've specialised in telling human stories in remote locations, science adventures, and working with adventure athletes. As well as getting the funding for the expedition, we got actually a huge amount of product support from different companies, from Canon, from SanDisk, from outdoor equipment manufacturers like Montaigne and a number of others. This was the team. So on the left there, we've got Anne Daniels. She's probably the most accomplished polar explorer you've never heard of. She's a mum of 4, based in Exeter. We've got Tyler Fish there in the middle, one of only 2 Americans to get to the geographic North Pole unsupported. And then on the right, we've got Adrian McCallum, is a snow scientist that doesn't like the cold and lives on the Sunshine Coast of Australia. So it's a really interesting bunch of guys. And my job as an embedded director cameraman was to literally live and work with them for 10 weeks on the frozen Arctic Ocean. And this is what we were getting up to be able to tell
Is that you in the water?
That's me in the water. So my job was actually to tell their story of the science and really bring it to life and build that over a 10-week period. Now, the documentary is still in post-production, and one of the reasons it's taken over 2 years to get to this stage is that we were waiting for the science to be collated, be peer-reviewed, and be published. And it's a long and lengthy process. And rather than just making an adventure travel documentary, I very much decided to make a science adventure and really get the science at the core of this. And what I'd like to do now is share with you a little taster tape of the documentary that's on its way. So It's got a really interesting backstory to this project. 2 years ago, I was here at DocFest, and there was another session looking at new ways of funding for documentaries. And Nick Fraser was there talking about Storyville and how documentaries really should just be funded through national broadcasters. And this kind of created a really interesting debate about alternative funding mechanisms. And C21 magazine got involved and just started to say, well, there are alternatives. And the mechanism that we actually employed for this production was more like a sports sponsorship mechanism. And I think the really interesting thing today, there's no real precedent set. Everybody's doing it ever so slightly differently. And what we were doing is using a model that was originally set up by IMG for sporting events. So in essence, the event, the Catlin Arctic Survey, was a ring-fenced event, and we then separated out the documentary production so I could maintain editorial control of that. And then we had another set of deliverables ring-fenced, and this was the above and the below the line marketing activity. So all the sponsorship promotion that you'd find for a sporting event. And what we're doing for that, in order to deliver the kind of really sponsors pound of flesh, for want of a better term, we were actually getting them awareness right across the board. And one of the key things that Catlin were wanting is to raise their profile for shareholders in North America and Southeast Asia. And what we were able to do is coordinate the furthest north live link into a news show. And here we are, literally just at the geographic North Pole, using a satellite link directly into a CNN program, and then there were feature pieces syndicated across to news networks across the world. Channel 4 sent up their own news reporters, and we also had pieces going out on BBC News. And then this was a really interesting one. BBC Earth reporters made a special piece that went out on BBC World. Now, we did get a little bit unstuck with this one because there are certain rules for the BBC that the funder of the production can't be seen within that, and it's almost getting into the realms of undue prominence. So you might have noticed that all the Catlin banners and logos right across the clothing, very similar to what you'd see sponsorship in a sporting event or for a football team for that matter. If I was doing this again, I would probably tone that down. So therefore, we're not as kind of conspicuous with all the branding across the clothing.
But would the brand have put the money in if you tone it down?
Yeah, I actually think it comes down to negotiation, because as a filmmaker, it's all a matter of if you can deliver all the PR and marketing activity, and I was working with marketing consultants and PR teams, so we were actually we created a production Bible. So if you've got a format for a TV show, you'll have a production Bible with the story beats and what you need to deliver. Before we went out on the ice, we had a complete guide to what we had to deliver throughout the entire expedition.
And can I ask, how specific were the brand? Were they like, we need, I don't know, one CNN piece, one BBC?
It was contractual. The most important thing was just coming back to those negotiations. What they were wanting, we were then saying, well, we can deliver that. So we had an entire production schedule. So every day we'd actually do a little bit of sponsored piece. I'd be filming for the documentary. And it was literally a matter of just ticking it off bit by bit.
And what would have happened to you if you didn't deliver those things?
Well, as you guys are contracted with your shareholders, it's really a matter of duty of care as well. When I work on contracts like this, it's a matter of really understanding what you can deliver rather than just ticking a box on a contract.
So did you have the CNN deal set up before? Because that's what they wanted, right? They wanted to be on CNN.
Yeah.
So had you agreed it with CNN, or were you just hoping that you'd be able to?
No. All that was coordinated with CNN.
It was, right.
The in-house PR team for Catlin had coordinated with Channel 4 and the BBC.
Right.
So you just had to provide the kind of video and stuff?
We had to provide the content on the ice.
They had to go to the Arctic, it's pretty big.
But I always regard it's like working with a production pyramid. So the key deliverable for Catlin was awareness through CNN. And CNN had actually done quite a number of news reports. And then all the other stuff, in a way, for the marketing department of Catlin, the documentary was an added bonus. And they didn't really understand a documentary, and they wanted to get their two penneth into it. And again, involved in that pre-production, that negotiation process, it was trying to get our heads around and just say, we want to go back and keep that editorial integrity. And 2 years on now, we're just about to finish the film, and the most important thing is I was able to retain the rights for that production. And the other thing as well, the project's evolved into a not-for-profit company. So rather than going a limited company where you can actually buy shares, I decided to make it as a not-for-profit company. So all the profits would go back into the production, and we can use this for an educational outreach program. And just the research that I'd done, making it a not-for-profit company, was more attractive to commercial companies rather than individuals.
Yeah.
So they can then put the cash into that, and for secondary and tertiary and quaternary investment into the film.
So you're not sharing the profits with the sponsors?
Not at all.
Of the doc? No.
No.
And they have no editorial control whatsoever?
Not at all.
Brilliant.
As long as, you know, we're not defamatory, we're not like any, if you do in any arrangement with a broadcaster or funder, as long as we show them in an appropriate light.
Yeah.
And so we're nearly done. It's 2 years down the line, and it's a long and lengthy process. But I've actually learnt loads and how both productions and marketing and PR can all work together.
Yeah.
And you can deliver all these things over a period of time.
It's really interesting you've been able to make the film you wanted to make without giving away the rights.
I think that's, at the end of the day, that's the most important thing, really.
Yeah. Okay, we have time for questions. Okay, yes, I'm going to take 3 at a time.
It's the most inspiring session I've ever been to.
Oh, thank you.
That's very nice.
I just think this next time, you've done it twice, will you not get help with distribution and sending out the payment that came?
What, are you feeling sorry for us?
Using something like Vintage House, so that all that's taken care of, so you have to think about that when you go and make the next film. And the second part of the question is, how do you secure your part of the ownership amongst all of that?
Okay.
Where do you rate yourselves? Are you 20% of it?
Yep. Okay, one more question. I'll take 3 at a time. Yes, this woman here.
Thank you.
We've crowdfunded our film through Kickstarter, and one of the things I've noticed is that only 2% of donations actually came through Kickstarter. The other 98% came from the work I did on Facebook and Twitter. So my idea was that next time I should just crowdfund via my website. Do you think this is ill-advised, or should I just go for it?
Okay, that's a good question. One more. Just this woman here in the front with the blonde hair. Yeah, got them around.
Well done, it's been really inspiring. I did just want to make a point of clarity though, which is that under the Communications Act of 2003, you know, we do all own our rights if we get commissions from terrestrial broadcasters. It's only Nat Geo and Discovery who don't give us our rights. So, you know, I mean, I have my own independent company and I own, you know, over 80 films that I've made through that.
Okay, great. Okay, so the first question on the admin. Well, we did have staff when we were making Age of Stupid. You know, we had lots of people doing different things, and now it's kind of winding down. We don't need people. For undercovers, it's going to be massive. So yeah, we're going to have production and accountants and things like that. And it's complicated because it's a company, so you pay dividends. So we don't really know what we're going to do.
What was the second part?
Second question was.
No, that's the second part of your question. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
We're not saying.
I think it's confidential. Yeah, at the moment.
But it's not that big. But it's not that small.
Yeah. We kind of, I don't know.
We own a percentage of. Yeah. Yeah,
we also keep some back for the crew. We keep significant back for actors because we're going to be trying to persuade them, and bands. Like, we always try and keep stuff back to persuade other people further down the line to work with us. For the women themselves, the real people, we offer them a percentage as well.
But I did with Age of Stupid, as we said earlier, when we got into trouble, I sold some of my shares, and that was how we raised the money very, very quickly. The 48 hours we raised, whatever it was. Yeah.
Okay, should you use a platform, like Kickstarter, I think was your question. We never used a platform, you know, we just did it firstly just by person, checks and paper agreements, and then we did go online, but all the big donations always came from bank transfers, you know, meeting people passing over checks. I wouldn't go on a platform, partly because it's like you're taking a horse or your investor to water and then giving them all these other projects, and, you know, you're not in control of it. I guess if you don't want to put loads of effort in and it's all there, the platform's all set up, it could be quite useful.
There's definitely a thing about we're spending a hell of a lot of our time, not 50% of our time, doing the admin of it, and when we could be making more films. We're very, our turnover is very, very slow, the amount of films we make.
Yeah.
One every 5 years. Admittedly, we've made 3 babies in that time as well. But if we weren't doing so much admin, we could make more films. So it's definitely something to consider. If you go to a platform, they're going to do all that admin and bank transfers and everything for you.
When I had the
send out the rewards yourself. So
yeah.
The admin job at the end is enormous.
That's
for 2% of donations.
Yeah, definitely. That's why we don't do it.
We don't do the rewards either, really.
Yeah.
I mean, I reckon people put money in because they believe in you, they like the project. The rewards is like, really, are they neither here nor there?
I mean, obviously we do credits.
Yeah, and we do tickets to premieres, but not like posters and stuff. But in about October or November, when I was spending endless time talking to our lawyers about all this, I was just like, we should have gone with Crowdcube, because that would have been really nice and really straightforward. But maybe not. We don't know. I haven't talked to people who've used that platform.
There's pros and cons, basically.
Yeah. The Communications Act, you keep your rights, but then you've given away broadcast rights, like in the UK.
You don't really. I mean, you can have your secondary broadcaster rights. You just license the broadcaster.
Yeah.
The broadcaster has a license for 3 years.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true.
You can negotiate on that as well.
Yeah.
It's just really important because it's a political thing. Under the terms of trade that we have at the moment, this is the very best place in the world to be a TV producer. But those terms of trade could be threatened by, a new government coming in.
Yeah.
So, through PAC, which is the Producers Alliance of Cinema and Television, it's very important that people get involved. I mean, I'm vice chair of PAC, so I have to kind of be transparent about that. But it is really important because people don't understand how big we actually have it as TV producers.
That's a great point.
And also, of course, we want to sell our films to TV at the end of it because that's where the biggest audiences are. It's like, our films are not on YouTube or anything like that. We have our own download. It's on iTunes and stuff like that, but we're certainly not giving them away free. We want to make the films we want to make and then sell them. McLibel was on BBC Two, Age of Stupid was on BBC as well. And that's where the biggest audiences are. So we're not just saying anything rude.
All self-distribute. Can I just, is my book going around? Are you guys putting your emails on, or has it kind of got stalled? Oh, you've got it. Brilliant. Okay. Has anyone not put their email on? Any more questions?
Can we do them one at a time? My brain can't cope with 3.
But I can write them down. Okay, this guy here. Yep, you.
No, sorry, I
Oh, you're putting your hand up for the notebook. Any other questions? There's a guy at the back. Up there, yeah.
How do you guys kind of remain focused as filmmakers when all this is kind of feeling on? Because it seems like you're probably, it's an ongoing process and you're probably getting emails daily regarding the funding.
Yeah.
How do you kind of put that away and making films?
I mean, we do split off. I'm the director, she's the producer. And, hats off to Lizzie. She was the one dealing with all those people having all their questions, and I was in the edit making the film, which is perfect. And people are constantly saying, other directors are constantly saying to me, I wish I had a Lizzie. But you can't have my Lizzie. But I think if you're the director, you do need a Lizzie.
But I think also, it's really exciting and really fun, and, getting the money and making all these deals, it's a creative process that you're going through together, and the investors sense that as well, and they're part of it, and you're talking to them very honestly about what you're doing, and they're we had 6 months where every Tuesday night we had a screening at Franny's house in Camden, and they would come and they would watch the film and they'd give us feedback, and then they'd probably put more money in, and it was they were all part of it all the way along. So I kind of see the making of the film, and this might sound really naive, but I feel like when you watch Age of Stupid, you can sense the spirit in which it was made, even though it's about a really bleak topic, climate change. It was made with a very optimistic, very community spirit. Everybody worked for £60 a day. The investors put their money in, and I feel like you can kind of sense that when you see it.
But that doesn't mean that it was a democracy in terms of making the film, of course. I was the director, the editor was the editor, and it was him and me who made all the decisions at the end of the day, which I think is very important. You need a creative producer, I really think so, because if you're trying to direct it and produce it, it's too hard if you're doing this, it'd be easier to get commission.
I think also from a sponsorship point of view, we had 15 people in the office at one time in Geomission coordinating all these deliverables. And I was involved because I was going to deliver the stuff on the ice. But without this pyramid of 15 people, it would have been impossible. And I think there are independent agencies now that specialise in advertiser-funded content, branding of programmes, and there's a good friend of mine, Levison Wood, who's out literally walking the Nile at the moment for Channel 4, and Group M have brokered the deal with Channel 4 to get the funding for this entire production. And so there are big organisations that have got the skills and the leverage to work with huge multinational brands. This was a total hybrid, and most of us, to be honest, didn't really know what we were doing when we put the Captain Arctic survey together, because we're all expeditioners, we were filmmakers, photographers, impassioned people about the natural world, but we're just needing some cash to make the whole project happen.
So are you going to have any restrictions on who you can sell it to because it was sponsored by a corporation? Like, would the BBC take it, for example?
I've had initial discussions with BBC World, and there's alarm bells ringing.
Yeah, but there is.
There's alarm bells ringing.
So but maybe you couldn't sell it to BBC, in other words. Maybe, yeah. Which would be a major drawback if...
But a bit like you, I think I'm more interested in actually getting the film out there at all levels.
Of course, But you have to weigh all these things up, but that would be...
it's always a matter of balance, really, isn't it?
But just back to that point, you know, during the Age of Stupid years, we kind of, every good idea we had, pretty much we did it, and we could raise the money, and we had the team, and we spent all our waking hours. But now, like, we both have small children, we're kind of much more strategic and focused, and we've kind of made a joint decision, like, we're not going to be able to do, like, a making of, which is really sad. We're not going to be able to do, like, we've had to say, we just can't do everything. If we're going to make this TV show, just doing that is in of itself so hard. So we kind of have evolved a bit with that. Any more questions? There's someone at the back there, yep.
My question is not about the funding, but about the recouping. So as you're recouping or starting to recoup with the Age of Stupid, where's the money? Because if you sell licenses or whatever, there's always a lot less money than if you co-produce or if you do a pre-sale. So is it in theatrical, is it in DVDs, or is it international licenses?
That's an interesting question. It's surprisingly, we made our biggest money, well, obviously from TV we made a lot, DVD sales, but we had this platform called Indie Screenings, which is non-theatric. It's like community screenings, and we actually kind of wrote the software and launched it with a lot of publicity. And that platform, which there's no middleman, there's no distributor, that raised £150,000 in year one, in the first 6 months, and that went straight to our PayPal account, and we, you know, that's money we can share out amongst our investors.
Is that streaming, or do you have to pay per view?
It was started with DVD. It was like people holding a community screening, and they get the license, and they can charge whatever they want. It's like non-theatric screenings, you know, in schools and libraries and colleges and things. So that was a surprising source of quite significant revenue.
But we did, of course, have a sales agent and distributors and people selling it to TV and people selling to DVD and da-da-da-da-da.
And cinema.
And on and on and on. Yeah, cinema releases in quite a lot of countries. And then, of course, they all take their cut, which is fair enough. Then it all comes to us, the remains of it, and then we divide it out.
I'd say overall, I think TV and DVD have been the most, if I've never actually done it, to look back of how much exactly, you know, where it's come from.
But it's still going on quite significantly 5 years later. And one thing we did do is we did our own download and streaming from our own website. And we had a web guy working for us at the time, full-time. It only took him 2 days. I mean, he was brilliant, but he wasn't that brilliant. And it took him 2 days to write us the bit of software that meant we had our own, essentially, iTunes on ours. And it still goes, and every day people are buying it and watching it. And
how much do you charge for it?
100% of the money comes to us. We have
It's means tested, so it says if you're a rich person in a rich country, it's £8. If you're a rich person in a poor country or a poor person in a rich country, it's £6. If you're a poor person in a poor country, it's £4, and then it has a little code, and it says, if you don't have to think about buying sneakers, then you're rich. And then it says you could just cheat and pirate it, and it says, but don't. It's got like changing messages like cheating's mean, like don't steal money off us, like things like this. But obviously some people do. Question here, there's a woman.
Anyway, my point is I would really get somebody to write you a little bit of download software, because it's, you know, you can put it on iTunes as well, of course, which we have done and which it is, and lots of other, it's on Netflix and it's on all of them. But put it on your own as well, and of course sell DVDs as well. Because then you get 100% of the money, which makes a huge difference.
But you have to put that into every distribution agreement, which is always a fight, because they never want you to sell from your own website. But
like when you make a deal with a German DVD distribution, they want you to not be able to sell your downloads to Germany, but that's too much like hard work to take Germany out of your downloads, so you have a big argument about it every time, but you usually win.
Generally we won, but some American scary cinema distributor managed to kind of beat us down on that for a bit. There's a question just behind.
Well, first of all, I echo what everyone said about how fantastic the session has been, so thank you very much. It's been really good. But in terms of the advertising-funded model, the brand-funded model, This is quite a direct question. So I'm just wondering whether, as a filmmaker, I understand that they didn't have editorial control, but did you feel under any pressure as a filmmaker to shift your focus at all? I mean, did you feel you had to kind of make it more of an adventure? Did you feel you had to kind of put things in that you may not, because you needed to access an audience that your advertisers would want to access?
I didn't feel compromised in any shape or form. The key thing was that when I had the initial discussions with the marketing team in Catlin, it was trying to recapture the age-old sense of exploration. And one of the decisions that I decided to make in the film as well, I didn't even utter the words climate change. I didn't even talk about impacts of climate change and global warming. I really drilled down into the whole idea of what human endeavour and exploration is all about. And in a really kind of subtle way, this linked into Catlin's kind of brand messages. So they were super happy, but I actually just came up with it independently. And it was almost a meeting of two minds. And when things work like that with a brand, then you know actually they're happy, but you've actually developed it totally independently. And this just came from a few pitching sessions. I went away and just kind of blue skied it as you would in a development process. And I just came back, this is what the essence of the film's about. And they loved it. And it was as simple as that.
I think it's just a complete coincidence that we both made films about climate change. You know, we asked Phil to be on this panel because he had an interesting funding model. But I think it's a coincidence, but at the same time, it's not a coincidence, because when, you know, we were trying to get Phil, you know, develop a project about climate change, we were talking to the commissioners, you know, and nobody wanted to do it. And this is one of the key things about alternative funding models. Going back to your point about this is a great place to get commissions and stuff like that. What subjects do we want to make films about? And do the commissioners want those subjects? You know, is it a coincidence that we had to invent these funding models to make the films about climate change?
It's exactly that, because we had original talks and discussions with broadcasters, and they were kind of going, technically to be able to deliver. So one of the reasons that I actually worked with the likes of Canon and SanDisk and all the kind of technical brands is that I worked with their R&D departments, their technical departments, to make sure the kit had worked in those conditions. And that I found was unprecedented. File-based recording had just come out at that time. And as a filmmaker, I was learning loads of new stuff, and I needed help and support. So sometimes sponsorship, it's that technical knowledge, it's that information that you're getting from the suppliers, it's that skill set that is invaluable. They came on board. The more an investor or the more a sponsor puts in, the more time that they will invest as well, so they get a return on their investment. And these guys were fantastically committed to the project, and I wouldn't have been able to do that without their help and support. So, yeah, interesting process.
Okay, this woman at the front in the red, we've got about 10, 15 minutes left, I think.
Thanks. It's a fantastic session. Thank you very much. I was thinking you were going to say that with the age of stupid, your funders got loads of dosh back. And I'm just wondering why they didn't, and is there anything you do differently now? And secondly, you say now you've got kids, but how are you making a sort of living wage, if you like, on what you're doing, or do you have money coming from somewhere else?
Why did they not get more money?
How much did we share out in total?
I don't know, it's about 500 grand now. It's a bit less than that.
Well, I guess there's not that much money in documentary at the end of the day. I mean, because it was #1 at the box office in the UK. It did have a cinema release all around the world. It did sell to TV, you know, but the amounts of money you get, as somebody was saying, if you get a commission or a pre-sale, it's a much bigger figure than if you sell it
later, acquisition.
If it's an acquisition. And then we add them all up, we divide it, and...
So you don't feel you undersold it?
You mean price-wise?
Yes.
It wasn't our choice to make. You know, we had a sales agent, Celluloid Dreams, who are one of the best ones in the world. They're making the deals with, you know, it's sold to Discovery in America, it's sold to BBC in this country. These are big guys, and, you know, they made the best deal they can. They took their commission, then they gave us the rest. So, yeah, I think that might be the reality. And it might be, to go to your next question, yes, we pay ourselves a living wage. The development money we raised for Undercovers, we pay ourselves Above minimum wage. We basically got minimum wage for Age of Stupid, but now we're above minimum wage.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're not getting rich in the monetary sense, but we're getting very, very rich in the meaning of life and experience sense.
Thank you.
Okay, any more questions?
But if anybody were to get rich from one of our films, if Undercovers is the next Breaking Bad, then the point is the money would go to us, it would go to the crew, it would go to the people who worked on it, instead of with other funding models, if it is a smash hit and there is tons of money, then guess what? It goes to all the middlemen and the distributors anyway. So at least in our model, if it does generate loads of cash,
We'll
it goes
get
to
our
the right
share.
people.
We'll get our share, definitely.
But so with someone like Simon Beaufoy, who's writing Undercovers,
Yeah, we're paying him.
You're paying him a sort of proper amount now, because do people feel, well, you're doing well, I'm not going to do it for very low?
I mean, drama people get paid a lot. So our policy across the whole show that we're aiming for is union minimum plus shares in the company.
Yeah.
That's for everybody.
Yeah.
And so far that's worked, but we've only, we've got a very small team at the moment.
But it goes without saying that Simon Beaufoy is not doing this for the money. Of course not. He's doing it because he wants to get the story out there, and we pay him a fair wage to do it.
I'll add into that as well. And with the not-for-profit that I've set up, everyone that's working on the project will get back to recommended rates for that. So it's not as if they're not doing it for anything. Any surplus generated by the film will go back into promoting the film. And I think another thing as well, if you begin to work with brands and agencies and their PR and marketing departments, these guys understand what things cost. And if you can dovetail in both with expertise and with appropriate language, you can earn a damn good living working with these guys because they've got money to spend. And they don't want to spend it in conventional advertising anymore. They want to actually create branded content. And some branded content is quite overt. It's more like a narrative ad running for 2 or 3 minutes. And others, the more intelligent brands, the more intelligent marketing departments, want to get involved in documentaries. And I think it's a fantastic new opportunity of finding funding.
Exciting. Okay, one last question, I think, here, this woman in the front in the white.
Picking up on what you said, how new is that they want to get involved in?
I've been hearing it on and off for the last kind of 4 or 5 years. But it's all down to the brand. And actually, to be honest, it's not even the brand, it's the people behind it and how they think. Some will think really conventionally, and therefore they might just do what they regard as a film is a YouTube clip that will go viral. That's about as far as they go. On the back of this, I'm now working with SanDisk to, rather than just on the kit, but to produce a series called Extreme Life Stories. And SanDisk is all about extreme recording and performance and capability. But what I'm doing is actually using those attributes in human endeavour and then trying to make an online series about human exploration. But there's no branding in it at all. It's all about those sensibilities. And SanDisk in the States are loving it. So I did a pilot of 3 films in South Africa just before Christmas, just to kind of test the market. So it's now thankfully gone up the food chain in SanDisk.
Oh, good. Cool. Well, thank you very much for coming to our panel. And you'll
Buy our DVDs, sign up to our mailing list, and if anybody's got £600,000, come and talk to us now.
Sweet.